Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers Podcast. With me today is my dear friend Amanda Turull. Amanda is a therapist, a dancer, a writer, a thinker, and in the world of sex and relationships. Amanda, it's an honor to have you on. Welcome on.
Thank you, Peter. It's so good to see you and be here. Very awesome Sunday morning.
Yeah, I'm really stoked. We got some really awesome topics for you today. We're going to talk about potentially, you know how the podcast goes. We may not hit all of them, but potentially we're going to talk about polyamory and sexuality, how we love, why we love, how our limiting beliefs actually block the love we truly desire. Um, we will talk about different aspects of psychology, breaking through different limiting beliefs around Tantra and sexuality, and distortions in society around this. So, Amanda, I'm really excited to dive in. Um, would you be open to sharing kind of your story of how your awakening started, how everything started for you?
Yeah. Um, yeah, have you listened to the podcast On Being with Krista Tippett? I think that's her name.
No.
I think you would like it a lot. She always starts her podcast with like what what was like your spirituality like as a child or like
Mm.
your religious upbringing or spiritual upbringing. And I think it's very cool to start with this of like you know, what laid the foundations for your relationship with God, with world, which is our relationship with sexuality and each other, as we are going to find out and talk about today. Um, but yeah, I mean, so for me, I grew up in a conservative, politically socially conservative household in San Diego, which is a mostly conservative place. Um, but I went through an early awakening because my older sister died when I was 5, and this put me into the world of death and existentialism of the who am I? Why am I? Right? Why am I on this like line of life and my sister is on that one? It started a relationship with the mystery and the unknown, and I from that day forward still continue to do so, have conversations with her all the time, where I am really like I will talk to her but also sit and listen and she will talk with me. And this is how I first came to under understand that there's things that we don't need to understand or explain in this life, right? So so that was happening since I was a child. And it didn't really match the like Catholicism that I was surrounded by, the Judeo-Christianity I was surrounded by. So I was like actively rejecting a lot of ideas of God. Like I didn't even like the word God. The reality is I was in a relationship with God, but I was just like, I don't want to be um confined or restricted by these like tighter religions that just didn't match how I understood spirit,
Mhm.
human spirit, God spirit. And yeah, so I did the pendulum swing of the rebellion for a very long time, and this is part of how I developed the interest in sexuality. I think it was coming from a place ultimately of being very interested in the unknown, the great mystery, the divine, and absolutely seeking love, partnership, attachment, union, but also being like I am not going to do things the way other people do. And so I'm going to give myself a whole lot of permission to express what I want and explore what I want sexually. Um, and so I did that. And the last like 5 years or so, I have been finding the middle path between these things, which has been a relief, to finally like embrace concepts of God and spirituality in my life
Hmm.
and understand that it doesn't doesn't restrict me from all the sexual expression that I want to do and play with.
Hmm.
Um, and working through the like religious shame I grew up with around these things, queerness and polyamory, right, that I really have chosen to embrace, and how those things actually can fit into um, my spiritual life and my relationship with God. And so, like, the awakening is still happening, right? I'm still exploring. The most recent death in my life of my brother was a massive awakening into spirituality, which, like, that's a whole other topic that we don't have to dive into, but just to understand that, like, I'm in a place of talking to and with God more than ever before and seeing God in everything and absolutely experiencing God in my sex. Um, which is a very interesting process to work with clients in, because most sex therapists who are non-religious are not bringing God into the room.
Hmm.
And so I'm just actively in that question with my work of how to invite um, people into a spiritual sex life without it um, having any shame or shoulds to it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's really, I think it's important because, you know, for most spiritual people that I know, they had to rebel against the system and kind of go the other direction and be like, you know what, that doesn't fit. I don't fit into that box. I want to break through. There is no box, right?
Mhm.
I'm just gonna explore and see what spirituality is for me. And I know that, sexuality and sex in general can be a very beautiful way to get into those deeper layers and levels with creator and just experience these divine, just like miraculous experiences that I haven't been able to access in other ways.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I talk about pendulum swings all the time in my writing, in my work with clients, of like, and we see this in micro and macro societies and cultures, right? It's happening now if you didn't know, in the US, right? The pendulum is swinging really far one way. And
Hmm.
but I think that we do this to find the middle path, right? This is kind of the like theory around polarities, is we have to understand the both polarities and the differences, right? We need differentiation to be able to have any sort of merging or oneness, which is a concept directly translatable to partnership of two people, um, that I would love to talk about. I think it's really, really important when we think about tantric sexuality, of differentiation and oneness, right? I think a lot of people, they just go towards the oneness and
Hmm.
wanting to merge, and that's what love tells us to do, right?
Hmm.
But actually, for eroticism, we need the differentiation. We need separateness, and we wouldn't actually be able to enjoy each other if we weren't two,
Hmm.
right? But we need this, like, the infinity sign, right, of the
Hmm.
polarities and the oneness.
Yeah, it's like the yin yang, the masculine, the feminine. It's permeated through all of this reality.
Yeah.
It's just part of, you have to experience the darkness you have to, they say you have to plant your roots into hell to reach heaven. It's like you have to go through that dark night of the soul in order to have that really deep opening and awakening for most people. And, it's there's the most of the spiritual teachers like Buddha, for example, were tested by the demons and different dark powers, and he just sat and they went away, things like that. So it seems as though in this reality where we live right now on Earth, it's almost part of the part of the program or the equation for that to happen for people, you know.
Yes.
So I'd love to talk about like Tantra. What is it? We haven't talked about it yet on the podcast. So I'm really, yeah, I'm really curious um, if you can kind of give your perspective on it. I've explored with it a little bit, but not to the extent that I know maybe you have.
Yeah, but I also want to give a clarifier that I have not been a student of Tantra.
Okay.
I have studied some in terms of like certainly experientially, um, and some awesome books that I can recommend, but there are so many people that know a lot more, and I just feel like I'm not going to be able to give a good enough like history and cultural context because Tantra comes from non-Western cultures, and I want to honor that, but I actually don't have the knowledge and language to do that. So I just want to start by saying that.
Okay. Yeah, no.
Um, and so maybe you'll have someone else on the podcast that can give more.
Yeah.
Um, and but I think the way that I understand, especially Western Tantra, is bringing spirit, bringing God into sex. Um, and that's broad and that can look a lot of different ways. I think the way people end up in the experience of Tantra sexually is by um exploring. So there's this way of like using breath, but not necessarily just like, okay, we're doing breath work while we're having sex, right?
Hmm.
But breath being like the kiss of God coming into you and then coming back out to like feed your lover, and in this cycle, allowing sex to be both like the representation and symbol of God's love, um but also the um yeah, also allowing it to be more in the like fusion, this like primal animalistic fusion of human love. Um, it allows for both. This is my understanding of Tantra. Again, there's teachers that really strictly keep it in the like God's love arena.
Hmm.
I don't. Um, but yeah, so within that, there is a lot to explore. There are a lot of teachers and methods. I would say that if we are just starting and we're like, what's Tantra? I want to have tantric sex. I want to understand what this is, right?
Hmm.
Some of the key pillars is going to be presence. And I think of presence in both sex and pretty much anything else I'm doing, right? Is like I'm only going to go as fast as my attention, right? So awareness is this piece of it, right?
Hmm.
Maybe we've had this experience where we are having sex or like, I don't know, on a walk, right? And we're like, oh my God, I'm not like I just walked like 3 blocks and I don't even know what I saw. I don't even know where I was. I was just in my head, right?
Hmm.
So so the presence is only going as fast as our attention. And sometimes that means we can go fast
Hmm.
because our attention is there, right? But it's this like checking in with ourselves through this process. It is there's a piece of a pillar of somatic awareness, which means the awareness is also you in your own body, right? It's not just like I'm aware that I'm with my partner, right? And it's always that we have a lot of awareness that's projected onto the other person or the object, the external, right?
Hmm.
But Tantra requires that our presence is with ourselves, with our own bodies, with our wombs, with our hearts, with our minds, what is happening in our own body.
Hmm.
And this is where breath is the tool for that. And then another pillar is attunement. And this is where we are listening to the our partner or partners, the humans we are engaging in physical intimate expression with. Um, and there is some kind of active listening where we're consciously attuning, right? But there's also practices we do so that our nervous system is doing that work without so much having to like consciously make ourselves attune, right?
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, and the attunement also to the presence of God and spirit. So that's like a rough go at Tantra, but
Hmm.
yeah, again, it's
Just
not
tip of
like
the
diving,
iceberg, very
especially
introductory, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
so that's beautiful. And you know, I've done very little. Like I've explored a little bit with it, and one technique that was really powerful for me was sitting with my partner, and a lot of times she would be. This was in the past, right? So there would be this envisioning
Hmm.
of the energy flowing through me into her, through her womb, back into me through my phallus, and back through to her. And just that envisioning what
Hmm.
was extremely powerful. It was way more powerful than I could have ever imagined. And when I shared it with one of my ex-partners, um, she would imagine the same thing. And there's this oval of energy, like a toroidal field that's happening. And then if there's interlocking of lips, then there's a full circle happening of energy through the chakras, through the energetic bodies, through the aura, and then back through the physical body.
Yes.
And just something so simple, that seemingly simple, right? Really shifted a lot. It really brought things to another level, for that whole experience. And it created a depth. It
Yeah.
started to create a depth and a connection because it didn't feel like it was just me and her anymore, right? It started feeling like it was me, and I was part of God and she was part of God, and we were just like merging into God is what the best way I can describe it in words. It was really interesting. And like in today's society, so much is revolved around porn, and like people learn how to have sex from watching porn and these kind of things. And there's nothing wrong necessarily with that, but porn also is lacking that connection and that depth because these are actors, right? And so I'm curious what if you've practiced any of these kind of techniques, or if there's any techniques that you know of that you could share about that have been really profound for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I just also want to speak on the porn thing because um porn addiction is something I work with clinically. Um and I would just want to pose like why do people learn from porn?
Hmm.
Because we don't talk about sex as a society,
Right.
um, which is mostly because of religious influence
Hmm.
that says that somehow sex is shameful, that sexual desire is shameful, right? And so much is repressed and locked up. And so yeah, then people turn to porn to learn how to have sex, to see something, to understand, right? So um I just wanted to name that as like it's a symptom of a sick society, and I feel energy to change this aspect of society, and lots of other people in the realm of sex education and sex therapy feel this, and so that's really cool. Um, and
Well, while we're on that topic, what do you think would be some societal solutions to shift us into a more healthy relationship? Or I know there's like, sex education in school and things like that, but that I don't think that really did much for me at least.
Yeah, no, I mean, there needs to be a complete revamping of sex ed, and it needs to start when children are very young. Children start exploring their sexuality, not understanding it's their sexuality, right? But they start realizing certain things feel good very young.
Mhm.
And in a lot of families, shame starts very young too. So there needs to be sex ed around parents or for parents, right? Um, One thing I feel very passionate about is working with couples who have young children or are going to have children, and helping them in their sex and intimacy, because and other arenas, right? All of that ends up getting projected onto the child, right? They feel sexual shame, and that's why they project it onto the child. Um, so yeah, um, there needs to be like public school resources for children and adolescents. And once children are, or once adolescents are in puberty, they are thinking about sex, they are starting to have sex, and we are not giving them education that is around Tantra, pleasure, BDSM, things that are available to adults who are seeking that out, right? Like, why is it that like teenagers that we know are having sex are only getting information around like how to not get pregnant and some basic stuff on consent, right?
Mhm.
We are not giving them the permission of like, hey, God has made you with desire. So, what are you going to do with that? How do you understand your relationship to your own pleasure? The reality is that sex is a gift, right? It's a necessary for us to keep going as a species, and it's a gift. And when we do it well, meaning like it's well integrated, we're able to ask for what we want in safe relationships and get what we want and need. It it creates really emotionally, mentally, physically healthy people and societies.
Mhm.
And so that just needs to start very young, and that's going to take like people fighting for it. And part of the shift is to for people to know that it's worth fighting for. You know, there's a lot of things that we need to change in the world, and there's a lot of things to fight for. And sex is a thing that gets just like thrown on the back burner. I see this in couples all the time I work with, right? They come in wanting to talk about all these other issues, and then once I start inquiring about their sex life, there is so much going on.
Mhm.
Um, there's so much in the psychological shadow going on.
Big time.
They're like, well, we can just go into couples therapy. We just don't need to talk about it. It's okay that we're not having sex.
Mhm.
But we have all these feelings about not having sex or not having the sex we want, or Um, so there needs to be some kind of shift in the cultural understanding that sex is an important thing to talk about, to educate children, adolescents, adults on, um, to like be really clear of what we desire and ask for it, and know that that is not bad or shameful
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I
as a
think
start, you know?
yeah, I think this is something that's so vast, and there would have to be some big shifts for people to not turn to porn and things like that for that
Yeah.
type of quote unquote education. Um, but yeah, so on the other part of the question, what has been your experience with those deeper levels of like feeling God? Was there any techniques that you would say were more impactful or led you into that space more more readily?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest key for me is like safe, secure, um, yeah, emotionally intimate and um really strong mutual attraction in the relationship. This
Like
is really,
physical and energetic attraction.
yes, yes,
Hmm.
where it's just like I want you so much, so my body's going to fully open
Hmm.
to this. I did a lot of exploring sexual techniques and skills with people I was like not fully attracted to, but I didn't quite understand that until I did finally feel like full attraction.
Hmm.
So, I got some practice, but it's very different when it's like the body, the whole system on a level that I can't even put words to feels this attraction, right? There is like a full openness to allow in spirit, God, love, the other person's system into me, right?
Hmm.
Um, so that's baseline, and so this is where like
Well, I have a question about that real quick.
sure.
So, you mentioned security, right? Feeling secure and safe, and that full attraction, right? So, I've been in situations in the past where my partner was unsure and had trauma from past relationships that didn't allow for that full opening, right? And that full attraction may have possibly been there if that deeper work had been done. Would you say that there's a correlation with that?
I mean, trauma affects everything. Sexual trauma is a really, really awful, painful trauma. And yeah, and it takes time. I mean, all trauma of any kind affects our ability to be fully intimate, whether that's physically, emotionally, both. Because trauma essentially says it's not safe to be in connection with other humans.
Right.
Um, and so like the short answer is yes, right? But I'm a huge proponent of relational healing, especially for sexual relational trauma. It's like understanding that we don't actually break through the the trauma-based belief that it's not safe to be connected, it's not safe to open our hearts unless we do it while we're afraid of doing it, right? Like
Hmm.
I see this all the time with my clients. It's like, okay, well, I'm just going to work on my fear first here in therapy, and then I'll go do the thing that I'm afraid of, and I'll just be clear. I'll just go do it clear, right? And I tell them all the time, actually, the work is going to be you're going to do it while you still feel the fear,
Right.
and then you're going to it somatically, experientially learn that it's safe to do these things you're afraid of. And I only know this because this has been my own journey. I have intense childhood trauma, like really big attachment wounds. And vulnerability has been hard for me in my life.
Hmm.
I really swung towards like performative sexuality um and
What
perform
what does that mean, performative sexuality?
It's like I know what the my sexual partner or potential sexual partner wants. I can read them. I am a stereotypically attractive white female. I know how to like work what I got and give them what they really want and desire. And then get, my ego fed from that.
Hmm.
And I got like a false sense of security, right? Because I got a sense of security of like, okay, great, they want me, they're attached to me, I'm not alone, but I didn't get a sense of security that like who I authentically am is safe, right? It was,
Internally, right? Like inside
yeah,
yourself, right?
right,
That's
right,
huge. I think that's super huge. I think for a lot of people in this world that's a major thing, that people don't feel safe inside themselves, right? And then that
yeah,
that gets projected into so many different aspects of their life, right? Like fear starts to run the show.
Yeah. I mean, yes, fear run pretty much runs the show for most people.
Yeah.
The goal is not that we get rid of fear. It's not bad. It's doing its job. It wants to protect us, right?
Hmm.
Our responsibility is to understand our desires and values and choose those anyways,
Hmm.
even when we feel fear, right? And so this was my own journey of choosing emotional vulnerability, of choosing authenticity, of choosing to like when my partner calls me out to not just like run away or hurt them back, to choose to actually vocalize what I want sexually, or choose to pause because I realize I'm out of my body rather than keep performing, right?
Right.
In the beginning of this journey, it felt like I was gonna vomit every time I had to be that vulnerable. Like it was very, very challenging. Um,
And it
and
probably would have been good if you vomited because that's like getting well, right? Like that's clearing
yes,
that
but
energy.
I did vomit several times actually. With like when I really was breaking into the somatic sexuality, and was with a partner who could hold me in that.
Hmm.
I would cry and vomit, and yeah, so we have to move through these things and we have to choose anyways with fear. It doesn't have to be like in spite of fear, but just like we can hold our fear gently and compassionately, but not, yeah, have it like run the show, like you said.
Hmm. So with this eventual partner that you had this really intense attraction for, and you had done the internal work to feel safe and leaning into those edges of vulnerability, building up to this experience. What were your experiences like getting to those deeper levels of connection and feeling spirit and the presence of creator, things like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. I mean, it's cool this is like actually very present. This is my current partnership we're talking about. And so it's very here with me in this room today. And it's so cool. I am learning so much. One thing that I want to talk about is actually like how much BDSM has been a like quote unquote tool or method or whatever for um for being in this like very tantric somatic sexuality and actually opening ourselves up to um God and God's love, being channels of God, because I always gravitated towards being very submissive in bed as a like small woman, right? With men.
Hmm.
Um with as a queer person with other women, I would be like more switchy, but I had this like fear, this kind of like imposter syndrome thing around being dominant. And I felt like part of like the gravitation towards being submissive was just this like way to almost check out. Not always. Sometimes I would have really great sessions where I feel like I did like move through a lot and channel a lot and find this like very peaceful, grounded subspace. But a lot of times it was this like checking out and this just like, yeah, like you get to do whatever you want to my body. Cool.
When
Stepping,
when you say checking out, like, do you mean leaving presence, leaving the body, like not being fully present?
yes, not being fully present.
Hmm.
Exactly. Not having to step up, right?
Hmm.
Conscious sexuality requires us to step up.
Hmm.
And being in the sub role as a bottom, as a woman, yeah, like I did not have to step up.
Hmm.
Um, and now being with a partner who is very excited about me being in the dominant role, and I fully step into that role, I feel extreme presence. I have to be fully attuned, right? It's practicing that skill of attunement. It's I'm holding space similar to how I hold space for clients, right? But there is a much different level of attunement because this is the person I'm having sex with all the time, right? But attuning to like his that like sexual energy that's cycling through him. I feel like I can like see it
Mm-hmm.
uh, when I'm in that role and attuning to his like emotional level of like when to hold him and then when to come back out and when to like go harder or softer, what to say. Um, it feels exactly just like I'm channeling. And it's really incredible. And I mean, there's lots and lots and lots of making love of the like, the classic Tantra position where it's like I'm seated on him and the legs are wrapped around each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's eye contact and we're doing the breathing. And that is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. And I feel the channeling of God's love in those moments.
Mm-hmm.
And it is when we go into these BDSM containers with more clearly defined roles where we channel, where we literally use that container, that session to transform our psychological shadows. Like we bring these things out of the shadows and we look at it together, lovingly together, right? There's nothing that is like too much for the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we end and we're holding each other and we're reflecting, it's like the level of connection and closeness is just unparalleled.
Mm-hmm. And would you say that a big portion of it is also due to the work that your partner has done on himself?
I mean, absolutely, absolutely. And I don't want to speak too much to his journey,
Yeah.
but it's much newer to like think and talk about sex in this way is much newer for him than it is for me. However, we're both in an experience of newness together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say his work has been in his relationship with God is very, very deep and profound. It is like I'm learning so much about it through him. And so that's been the work so that he could be so open to like hear and see the gifts coming into his life and say yes to them.
Mm-hmm.
Even when there was maybe fear or shame or confusion, but to be like, I with clarity see that what he was being given was a gift and to say yes and to step into it, which I yeah, I don't see a lot of people doing. And I think this is where our limiting beliefs get in the way of the love that we want, right? Because because God could be saying, "Look, here's this love. This is the love of your life. This is what you've been asking for, right?" And they can be in the form of a person or a place or a, job, whatever. And then we can just be like, "Oh, but I'm not worthy."
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
Self-sabotage.
right. Or this like classic one going around of just like, oh no, it's too fast. It's too I need to be alone more.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so then we don't step into it.
Right.
And these things just pass us
I
by.
haven't done enough work, or I still got
Yeah.
to refine this and this and this. And it's like, okay, but when when is enough enough? And then that's also an addiction, right? Like
Yes.
people getting too caught up in being quote unquote perfect.
Perfect. Yes. Oh my
Mhm.
God. Yes, exactly. No, I am so into good enoughness. I talk about this a lot with my clients
Hmm.
of like good enoughness actually will save your relationships. It will save your relationships with your parents, with your kids, with your friends, your community. Like we need to stop like making these checklists for people and be like, if you don't check all these boxes, you're out, right? Like
Right.
good enoughness. Let
Yeah.
it be.
Yeah, and well, it's all a reflection of self, right? Like if the person still doesn't feel good enough, they're going
Mm,
to reflect that onto their partner or onto the onto the date or whatever is happening, right? And being like, okay, well, that's not good enough. And I've been there, you know, I've been there, and while I was doing it, I wasn't always aware of it. But now, with the level of awareness that I have, I am able to see those moments of self-sabotage. And I have a partner who's able to call me out on it as soon as it clicks in, you know, where it's
Right.
like, "Oh, you're doing it right there. You're starting to self-sabotage." And I'm like, "Damn it, you're right." You know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the good enoughness says like, and I freaking love you anyway.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's like finding the knowing and the value in self, and like knowing I'm good enough no matter what. And if this person doesn't see it, that's okay. They don't have to.
Yeah.
I am good enough for whatever, right? There's probably some powerful affirmations that can really help with that too, and different techniques to get there. But once that is achieved, then there's a whole different type of connection that can be built with someone when there's like this acceptance of the person just how they are.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is the other thing I was gonna say in terms of like, yeah, how do we get to have tantric sex, really embodied sex, right? It's like it's not possible if you don't feel like the person you're having sex with accepts you fully for who you are right now. How will you be able to express anything and everything that wants to be expressed during sex, right? Sex is a beautiful stage for what's happening with us psychologically in the present moment. And if we feel like the person that we're having sex with, or the people we're having sex with, are going to judge us, are going to not want this part, only want this part of us and not that part, right? Like it's just not going to work. We're not
Mhm.
going to be able to fully open and and then, you know, all relationships are feedback loops. So you can have a feedback loop where you're both totally accepting and loving each other right as you are right there. And then you get to express more and more and more and love more and more and more and feel more and more accepted, feel more and more, I'm good enough, right? Or it can go the other way where you feel judged. And so then you close off. And so then the other person feels rejected. And then you're in that feedback loop.
Mhm. Yeah, as you were speaking, it really made me think about how, like, if there's even a granule of resentment
Yes.
that I'm feeling internally, even if it's subconscious or something, I was just like, oh no, it's no big deal. If there's a granule of that, I find myself not being able to fully open in intimate containers.
Yeah. If you feel any resentment towards them or
Yeah, yeah, mostly that, and like if I'm aware enough to feel their resentment towards me, obviously as well. Yeah.
yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's where, yeah, some people fall into a pretty deep trap, like psychosexual trap, where actually they start playing out their resentments sexually. This is one arena where if BDSM isn't done consciously, it can be pretty detrimental, right? And yeah, and then it creates a feedback loop of being like, okay, well, we can just kind of like work out our issues sexually, but we're not really feeling connected while we're having sex, but I'm getting attention, right? And it can kind of feed that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting how um those deeper levels are really hard. I would say very difficult for me to reach if there's any type of emotional charge or anything that I'm feeling with my partner, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's almost like, what's the point until we clear it out? Because it's like, then we're just like using each other to masturbate, but it doesn't even feel good. It's almost like there's no depth, there's no, it's like, yeah, it just doesn't make any sense, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I think it's very important to have the like verbal processing around resentments. And then this is where the good enough comes in too, of like understanding when the process has been good enough and consciously choose to let it go.
Right.
This is very key. This is how you are able to get back into a place where then you go towards connection, and that can happen sexually or in other forms of intimacy. But one place that I think a lot of like spiritual couples that I've seen get caught up in too is just this endless processing
Right.
um that needs to happen around their personal psychologies, their relationship dynamic back and forth. And truly I can't stress this enough. There needs to be a point where we say, we did good enough in this process and we're gonna let it go now
Right.
and move on. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's also, it seems like that's tied into that like self-sabotage and those kind of things where it's like the family dynamics from childhood, the chaos is what was natural, what was kind of the baseline, right? In the family dynamics. And so there's a recreation of that for some people, right? Where they subconsciously recreate this chaos, and then it's like, okay, are you just trying to bring this up to me to fight and to like bring up some sort of cycle, or and like there's some part of you that's getting fed by that, or is this actually um like, are you ready to resolve this, basically, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. We can have an addiction to chaos. We can have addiction to anything. It's pretty cool. Um, and I mean, I use it as a framework a lot, not to be pathological, but just like, yo, our brains are like wired for addiction, for like seeking dopamine.
Hmm.
And if we got attention from chaos growing up, then yeah, we'll seek that. Like we understand um we have, misconstrued attention as love or attention as connection, which means like any attention. We can get a bunch of negative attention and we're like, cool, they love us, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and and I think for some couples, like fighting ends up being kind of like their only form of intimacy. And this is part of why in couples work, we have to work on sex and physical intimacy along with processing resentments and wounds and pain, right? Because if
Hmm.
we just do all that verbal processing, then it just sends this message that, like, okay, we connect by having conflict. Conflict is one way we can connect, conflict and repair, right?
Hmm.
But being able to connect through our bodies non-verbally doesn't have to be penetrative sex.
Hmm.
But being able to feel this level of attunement, we can melt into each other, we can move with each other, we can breathe together. That requires us to feel safe, that requires us to value that form of connection. And it's not a chaotic form of connection. I think words end up being much more chaotic, right? And so, again, this just goes back to we have to understand what we desire and value if we're going to break our patterns. Um, it's not enough to just say, I don't want to do that anymore.
Hmm.
It's like, yeah, for sure. But like, why? And what do you want to do? And what
Hmm.
do you want your partnership to look like, right? I ask a lot of clients, how do you define love and how do you define partnership and why do it?
Right.
Why do you even want to do it? Why love this person? Why being partner? Why seek out partnership? And um a lot of clients come in and they cannot answer those questions.
Mm.
Right? There is something that we're taught very young that it's important to be in partnership, right? And so we know that, we have that feeling, but we haven't consciously chosen for ourselves why it's really important to be in partnership, for it to be healthy, and what that means to us, how we want that to look, because it will take effort. But effort is another word for love. So that's okay, but we need to understand what the effort is and why we're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that bridges into like how we love and why we love, right?
Yeah.
Those are really interesting topics. Um, what what's been your process with your clients and personally around that?
Those questions.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, love has been like love was my first like reclaiming my spirituality or my religion. It was love.
Hmm.
Um, that's what I understand to be the greatest force in the universe. That's what I understand as God. That's what I understand as our purpose, right? And so there's just like the level of like living in love, um, which requires acceptance. And that's where it's hard and challenging for a lot of us, right? Because if we want to live in love with the world, it requires us to accept the world. Yet we also all desire changes, and that's okay, right? But we have to start with accepting where it's at, loving where it's at, which means loving the pain,
Hmm.
right? Loving the grief, loving the death, loving the suffering, loving the conflicts. Um, in terms of like romantic love, this is one of those like beautiful mysteries because I know the neurobiology of love, attachment, and sex. I know why we're flooded with brain chemicals in the beginning of a relationship. I know why that switches to the calmer, just like primarily oxytocin later, um, because there's certain things built into us that want to make sure human life continue. So I get all of that. And I think there's a mystery to it, right? Like, we don't necessarily need to love each other this much to make babies and raise babies. And we don't need to like put so much emphasis on the partnership. And so, yeah, it's all part of this mystery that I just like love to be in and explore and not like need to find answers, but just find really fascinating.
Yeah,
Um,
that is really fascinating.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it brings up the thought um and the concept of like that honeymoon period. You kind of mentioned the hormones around that, and the last couple of relationships I've been in, that hasn't really existed because there's been like maybe it's because it was a more conscious relationships. I've also explored with like being with partners in partnerships and not having sex, and like because of those kind of things, like I looked at it in a very explorative way of like, hey, what kind of depth can we reach without the physical intimacy? Like, where is the limit of how deep love can get without actually engaging in bodily fluid exchange, right? And those have been really interesting because I've been able to reach those really deep levels of love with people without any physical intimacy. And I've also um, had experiences where I would what you were mentioning, right? Like those chemicals where it's like when I would have intimacy with my partner, in the previous partners, then there would be like 2 or 3 days of like really deep connection, and then if we didn't engage in sexual intercourse in those 3 days, then there would be some sort of um, conflict. And then if there was more of those chemicals released, then it was like that conflict would either get pushed back or something like that. So I'm really curious about that.
Yeah. I want to understand really quick your choice. to not have physical intimacy in the beginning of these relationships? This was like a conscious choice you made.
Hmm.
For how long?
I mean, I had a few relationships like that. One was like 3 or 4 months where we it ended up just ending.
Mm,
But others were longer. It just depended. It was for me, it was a conscious choice because I was very aware of karma and of energetic exchange. And at that time, my beliefs were that if I were to engage in sexual intercourse with certain people, with certain past partners, then there would be this taking on of some of their
mm,
deeper wounds and things like that. And um, there, I didn't have. There was some pretty deep trauma for some of these people, and I was not looking to take that on.
understood. Got it. Okay. And so then in this process, what did you learn?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, with the one relationship, I learned that without physical intimacy, there's still this depth of love that can be fully uh, reached, and there's a really different level of connection, and it almost felt like those hormones and things that you were mentioning. Um, they were more stable. It felt like there wasn't this like little jolt and then this drop, like with the
Mm,
other relationship that I was mentioning, where it was like there would be sexual encounter, there would be 2 or 3 days of like real nice like cruising connection, and then there would be this drop if there wasn't intimacy. So yeah, those types of those experiences really taught me a lot.
Yeah. So, yeah, I will say like I don't think it has to drop either.
Hmm.
Um, I did want to like normalize the just like neurobiology that happens. That's like we don't really get to control that because our reproductive systems are they're doing their thing, you know.
Right.
And they want to merge and they want to make babies and that's cool. That's great. Um this is true of queer people too, by the way.
Hmm.
Even if their like bodies aren't going to reproduce from sexual intercourse, they still are feeling uh neurobiological upswing. So there, okay, so part of what we can get caught in is the like attachment to this early stage, right? We know that being flooded with these brain chemicals, falling in love is like being high on drugs. Um, and yeah, it's a drug, and it's with addiction again, right? Attachment. We can be like, I just want to be in this stage forever. And so then when your brain chemistry naturally starts to shift, it drops if we're like, oh no, oh, I don't want that, right? Like the resistance. We don't want the relationship to change.
Hmm.
What I think can happen instead is like, sure, the neurobiology, the hormones might change. There might be a drop, but the experience of being in love does not have to drop
Hmm.
away at
Hmm.
all. The experience of being in love is not controlled by brain chemistry. There's some information from the brain chemistry, right?
Hmm.
And the way that we can keep growing in love is by completely accepting change, by not having attachment to who we as a couple were yesterday, who our partner was yesterday, who we are yesterday, right? And stepping into this is my relationship today. This
Hmm.
is what I'm being presented with, right? And loving it, right? This is the like being in love with the world that can guide us in our partnerships, right? Because it's like, great, there's a change.
Hmm.
Amazing.
Hmm.
I get to be in this change. I get to explore this change, right?
Yeah.
Um, I love the high of falling in love. I love the like honeymoon stage, the new relationship energy. And I freaking love the like nesting, the like long, just like so connected nesting. Like, you are so comfortable doing everything in front of each other. And like I love talking about like monthly budgets and what color you want to paint the walls. And like I love that. I get off on that,
Uh-huh.
and my framework for life in general is an erotic one, which means that as I go through changes, relationship changes, I feel them erotically. I feel how every stage, every different shift and change can inform me erotically differently, right? That sure, there's there's a lot of like heightened sexual energy in the beginning of a relationship, right? And it can be kind of um sometimes can be the animalistic, the primal, or it can just be the like that like, oh, I want you so bad, right? That desire.
Hmm.
But there's also something so erotic to me about the like let's schedule our sex because our lives are busy and we want to make sure we have sex before dinner and then I'll cook you the dinner. And like there's so many ways that we get to be in this world. And I think the erotic framework is really helpful. Um Eros being like life force, vitality, um and the erotic mostly about being our relationship with ourselves, with our bodies, with our sexuality, right? Um, so that we get to be like, ooh, now we're in this stage, like
Hmm.
juicy, exciting,
Right, right. Yeah, I really like that framework where it's like let's check in and see where we're at today. We're
Yeah.
different people. We've worked through certain things through, the last couple months or days or even minutes or hours, right? And let's check in and see where we're at and move from that space that, that and not that's that piece, right? Like comparing. The comparison is the thief of joy. So if we compare to how it was when we first met, we're not those same people anymore. So there's no point in looking back at that. And the hormones are going to do what they're going to do, like you said, and our bodies are going to react how they react. So it's really good to find that excitement in whatever stage of the relationship you're in, and it can be really beautiful no matter where you're at. So I really like that. And what as you were talking, I think it would be really um, impactful for people to hear about the four different attachment styles: anxious, avoidant, safe, and then the mixed, right? Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah. The yeah, there's anxious, avoidant, disorganized is usually how they call it when it's, you kind of swing back and forth between anxious and avoidant. That's the one that I have grown from. So
Mm,
that's fun. And then the fourth one is secure,
secure. Hmm.
which is a little different than safe because it's like this strong base so that you can actually do things that are unsafe, right? The other three attachment styles are actually overly concerned with needing to stay safe all the time, right?
Hmm.
Securely attached folks, individuals and partnerships, couples, um, are able to like go out into things that are less safe and new and maybe uncomfortable, and then they know they can come back and they have their like secure base, right?
Hmm.
Um, they can do more experimentation. They, yeah, it like when my partner left this morning, I'm gonna see him later today, but I was like, wow, the whole day without you, right? And I felt my attachment, and that doesn't mean I'm like insecurely attached, right? Like part of secure attachment is that you feel um the poles of your attachment system that are like, oh, but I feel so good when I'm with you, right?
Right.
Um, but just understanding, okay, I might be like uncomfortable for a few minutes when he's gone because I'm like, whoa, what do I do now? We just spent the last like 36 hours together. Okay, how do I orient? But understanding like I will be fine because I also trust myself and I trust my autonomy and I trust our relationship is going to come back together at the time that he says he will come back, right? Like there it's about that trust. So, in terms of working with attachment styles, I think this is like a a big like pop psychology moment for attachment. Um, and when I think about like our attachment systems, I think about how we are wired for connection. Um, I think about also this idea we're talking about way earlier. I don't even know if this is while we were being recorded. Maybe it was, but the differentiation, right, and the togetherness, and how we need both, right? Secure attachment says, I am um I trust myself to be alone. I
Hmm.
trust you to be alone. I trust us to be emotionally intimate. I trust us to be connected. I trust that when we leave each other, we'll come back. I trust that when we're together, I can ask for space and it will be okay, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, the other attachment styles are we understand more or less that like the majority of humans are born with secure attachment, like the great majority. And as they go through life, that we have attachment wounds. So it's attachment's not something you're not stuck with an attachment style at all. Like it is something that you can really actively work on. It means that you make those hard choices, right? The ones I talked about earlier. Um, I had a disorganized attachment style. Right. So there's this anxious avoidant, meaning that the anxious piece was um never wanting to be alone.
Hmm.
But the avoidant piece was like, I don't actually really want you to see me, right? I
Hmm.
don't actually want to be in emotional intimacy. Um, and so when I really started making the conscious effort to be in secure partnerships, that meant that I had to be emotionally vulnerable and I had to understand my routine was spending time alone and consciously choose that. And um not like do whatever I could to get my partner's attention again, right? So I had to check that. That was hard work. That involved doing things I was afraid of, that felt painful, that felt uncomfortable, but I understood that that was my value and my desire for partnership and that it was worth it. So that's the work with attachment, right? Most of our healing of attachment comes from relationship. It could be a romantic relationship, but this is actually what's happening in therapy between therapist and client is that it's a securely attached relationship.
Hmm.
And so the client gets to learn and understand what secure attachment is of like, oh, I can show up at this hour and be emotionally vulnerable and it's safe. And then I'm also going to leave and me and my therapist are going to live separate lives, but I know she's going to be back when she said she's going to be back, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And be there for me. So, um, so that's how we learn secure attachment. And yeah, I guess I just think like one of my critiques of the way we're talking about attachment styles right now in the world is it feeling like boxes that people put themselves in or put other people in. That's the worst, putting other people in the boxes. Right?
Yeah.
Um, not understanding that it's like we are changing constantly. We might have one way of our like our attachment system showing up in a relationship and then a different relationship it shows up a different way, right? And so it's seen it more as just like like the way we see our nervous system where there's response to stimuli which can change if we have trauma or, capital T or little t trauma, which can change if we're in a city or the forest or, so our attachment system is very similar, in that it's doing its work to try to protect us
Hmm.
being hurt, and it can change according to different stimuli, and we can make conscious effort to work on it through um, therapy, somatic work, and conscious relational work.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you, so what what are some ways that you found to be more effective for people that are in those first three, right? Not the secure one, but what have you found to be more effective for your clients or for friends or for yourself?
So, yeah, most effective is knowing your why because, yeah, like, especially if you have big attachment wounds, it's just going to take effort, and you need to know why you're putting in the effort to have secure attachment.
Like
So, one thing,
why are you in this relationship? Like that kind of why or
like, why does it matter to you to have secure attachment? Why not just do what you've always been doing?
okay.
Comfortable, right? Like, why not just stay with anxious attachment?
Yeah, it's really I'm more I used to be more anxious attachment style and it was brutal. It was like so bad in college, for example, that like I would literally be shaking. I would be like I would have physical responses when my partner would leave at the time, back
Yeah,
then. And yeah, it was really rough.
right.
So that that's my why
Yeah,
to why I
yeah.
really wanted to shift it.
Yeah, great. I mean, yes, that yes, just being like I want to feel at peace with myself when my partner leaves, right? Like
Right.
that's great. Um so yeah, everyone's why can be different, but we have to start with that, with understanding our why for doing this kind of work. When anxious attachment's showing up more, that's about a relationship with the self. Um, Meaning that if there's a lot of anxious attachment showing up, there is not enough trust in yourself,
Hmm.
to like hold whatever is going to come up, right? Anxious attachment doesn't just mean you have anxiety and anxiety is bad. Like it is okay. Securely attached people can feel anxious when their partner leaves,
Hmm.
but securely attached people just hold themselves in that anxiety,
Mm.
right? Because there's a strong enough relationship with the self that's
Mm.
like, hey, I'm going to be the caretaker because cognitively there's enough understanding that your partner deserves to leave if they have to do something else. And they're their own person,
Right,
right?
right,
And it's going to be okay. And so it's now your responsibility to tend to the anxiety and not keep putting it on them.
right.
When avoidant attachment is showing up a lot, that is in relationship with others. It is that it is not trusting other people, um, and can also be maybe not like trusting the world to love you fully for who you are, to
Hmm.
be able to hold what's showing up in the relationship, right? And so avoidant attachment says, all right, I don't trust this relationship can hold it. I don't trust this person is going to love what I show them. So I'm going to hold back the intimacy, or, the classic, I'm going to leave before they leave me. I'm not going to put myself in a vulnerable position.
Right, right.
And so, and so then that work comes from the like leaning into emotional vulnerability in this way that almost feels like vomiting, might sometimes be actual vomiting. Um, and the other person, and so, this is where the wounds happen because sometimes the other person can't hold it,
Right.
and that is really painful, right?
Hmm.
But if you have enough experiences where someone does hold it and does love the vulnerable parts you're showing, which is key. This is what therapists do. So like do this work in therapy, right? Like
Right.
therapy. hold your parts. Um, then we get to experientially learn that it's safe to trust someone. It's safe to lean into vulnerability. It's safe to ask for help, right? And so those are just that's the basics. And I say anxious attachment showing up or avoidant attachment showing up because understanding that that can happen for all people,
Hmm.
right? We a lot of us have patterns where it's like pretty clear which one we gravitate towards more in relationships, but plenty of us will respond just to the person we're in a relationship with and kind of go back and forth. And so,
Right.
and even in one relationship, right?
Hmm.
We can go back and forth. So it's just kind of understanding. Today the anxious attachment showed up. I was like, yeah, great. My partner deserves leave and then go have the day he wants to have. And I also have the day I want to have. And so I'm just gonna like sit here for 15 minutes, meditating, breathing, holding my heart, telling myself I love myself, and doing some like reflection on our time together to like remember that there is a energetic connection if we're not in the physical. Um, Yeah, and that's solo work. That's my responsibility. That's not my partner's responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really powerful to reflect for me on like how it used to be and how it is now. And it's like it's so much more easeful for my nervous system and for me to just, like in the past, if one of my partners was to go on a trip, like it would be really difficult for me, regardless of with who or when or how, you know, uh, it would really take a hit on my nervous system. And right now my partner went for a week on a trip with her grandson and his mom and a friend. And so it's just so interesting to reflect back and be like, okay, like I actually trust her so much that I am totally cool with it.
Mhm.
And there's that safety of like knowing she's gonna call me in the morning, and I get to look
Yeah,
forward to that. And then
yeah,
we can share our experience of the previous day together, and
yes.
there's just like this deeper, and I'm seeing 333 on my clock over here as I'm talking, but there's this deeper, just like a really deep trust and knowing that this person isn't just going to leave or isn't going to try to talk to other men, like in a romantic way. So it's it's there's a the more work that I did on myself, the more I attracted people that did more work on themselves and allowed for that deeper level of connection.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the concept of commitment, which I talk about regardless of relationship structure, monogamy to polyamory, we have to commit to something, like avoidance of commitment is very limiting.
Hmm.
And so I find it very important to commit to like this is the time we will meet, this is the time we'll call, this is how we're going to show up in the distance in us living our separate lives and then follow through. This is very, very key for our attachment systems, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I want to speak to this like clearly you do trust your partner, which is like very beautiful and we want to have that, right? But to me, the ultimate, like how to have secure attachment is a trust in self and trust in the world,
Hmm.
because there's no guarantee that your partner will not leave you,
Right.
whether because she decides or there's there's a sudden loss of some kind, right? Like we don't have full control. And so I like to help people not slip into like, okay, well, I know it's going to be okay because she'll always love me.
Hmm.
Or I know it'll be okay because she'll always choose me. It's like we can feel that they're loving us now and choosing us now, and that's like that can be ecstatic joy, right?
Hmm.
But ultimately, how we feel secure in the relationship is by saying, no matter actually what happens, I'm grateful to
Hmm.
have been in this moment, in this experience, and I don't want to run away from it, and I don't want to take it back. It's really important and meaningful to me. And no matter what happens, I will be okay because I will take care of myself,
Right.
because ultimately, and like, my relationship with God is strong. God is here with me. Um, and I trust the world. I trust like the mystery that is unfolding, and I don't need to know what's going to happen, and I don't need to have control
Hmm.
to lean into this relationship.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. For me, there was a really big correlation between learning how to hold space for others, learning how to hold space for myself. Those were very, interconnected. And then learning how to hold space for my partner and for other men in a men's container, things like that. But as the more I learned how to hold space for others, the more I was able to hold space for myself through these more challenging experiences, and the more tools came into my life that allowed me to be able to regulate my nervous system and to self-soothe and those kind of things. So yeah, that's a really important point. And that's also very present for me. And a big part of it is like I'm able to hold myself through whatever is happening through
Yes.
to my partner. And this brings up the you brought up polyamory, and I'm just curious how your journey started with that, what it evolved into, what have you learned from being in that world, those kind of things.
Okay, that's a really broad question. I could talk about it for a long time. So I'm
Okay, so I'm really curious how you got into the polyamorous world and what were some of the major lessons that you've learned through that.
Yeah, well, I mean, stumbled upon it as many people do, that like I was cheating in my monogamous relationships, and that felt pretty awful. Um, I mean, like as a teenager, right? I did my undergrad at Berkeley, which is one of the most progressive places in the world, and so I learned the concept of polyamory, luckily very young, I was like 18. And I was like, oh, that's it. That's the one, right? Like, great. I don't have to cheat anymore. This is awesome. And essentially, yeah, when I was 19, committed myself to not being monogamous ever again. I just didn't it doesn't mean that I'm always sleeping or dating multiple people, but that like the philosophies of at least how monogamy shows up culturally, socially in our world does not align with my philosophies on love. Essentially, I believe that the way to love people is by supporting their highest freedom. Um, which means I don't have any interest in controlling my partners. Um, I want to trust my partners and trust their decisions. And yeah, that being said, most of my relationships, because I also gravitate towards like deep love and connection and commitment, have looked in the realm of hierarchical polyamory, or non-monogamy.
What's
Um,
hierarchical polyamory?
it means that I have a primary partner, which they're at the top of the hierarchy of
Ah,
my
I see. Okay.
partners, right? Like they get like priority. That's who I'd be like fluid bonded with, for example, right? And then there's secondary partners. There's lots of criticism around this model of polyamory, and I understand why. Yes, I think it's part of the like rebellion against um the society that has created toxic monogamy, right, is like, okay, we don't need to put people in hierarchies. But that is just like how it's occurred to me. I've just like I've always loved duets. My study as a dancer has always been in duets, so I just think I'm kind of wired for duets. Um,
What do you mean by what's a duet?
like two people, one on one.
Oh,
Meaning
okay.
like I don't have a lot of interest in like a throuple
Hmm.
situation, or polycule, or like the just like poly. Do you know what a polycule is?
No.
Polycule, because it's a loud track. Polycule is when it's like four or more humans that are all dating each other. Um there's not like clear, obvious couples, and then they like sometimes have orgies. It's like we are all living together, sometimes raising children together. It's like a family, but everyone's romantically, sexually involved.
And a polycule can be two men, three men, one woman, three women, one man, doesn't matter.
It can be any and all
Oh,
gender.
okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And so yeah, so that doesn't interest me as much.
Hmm.
So in being into the duets, like I tend to have one-on-one relationships, which means also secondary partners are usually one-on-one. I have tried several times, like dating someone with my partner, and it's like sexy, but never turns out to be extremely fulfilling.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I guess like the some of the lessons I've learned are about just like, yeah, what I really want. And the understanding that what I want is going to change a lot, and to not be attached to like, well, I wanted it like this in my last relationship. Um, so that must mean I do it in the next relationship, of just like my idea of non-monogamy is just like a queering of relationships, right? When we queer something, it means we like take the like way it's supposed to be according to society. We take the boxes, the categories, and we just put it off the table, and we say, what do we each really want, right? So I love to start relationships with each person coming in and saying, what do we really desire, right?
Hmm.
Like, what do we want the relationship between us to look like and feel like? What are some things that as individuals we really want to accomplish in our lives, achieve? What are our goals? What are our personal goals, our career goals, our sexual goals, right? Um, Non-monogamy can be very helpful if two people are like deeply in love but have different sexual goals or interests, right? So if we are allowing each other's freedom, there's a high level of trust. It can be like, okay, well, I want to support you exploring what you want to sexually. I don't want to do that. Great. We have these like solutions for it, right? So I just kind of, rather than starting with like every relationship is going to look this way polyamorously, it's like every relationship I'm going to meet a new person, and we are going to work out together like what's really true and authentic for both of us. And again, this is something that changes over time. The relationships that I admire the most have often gone through changes and periods of being fully polyamorous to monogamous to monogamish to like casually dating other people. Like they have allowed their relationship to shift and change based off of what each person wants, what the relationship is calling for. A lot of polyamorous couples close up when they are in the like birthing and having young children portal. Some of them don't. Some of them like that's an exciting time to have other sexual partners. So yeah, I just think yeah, essentially that's what I want to say. It's less about these like words and concepts and trying to fall into the right category, but more like not getting stuck in any one way it's supposed to be or look like. Like a partnership is the like, to in my opinion, The
Hmm.
most amazing gift that we get from God,
Hmm.
right? Closest second is like all of nature, right? Which is really incredible.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's the first for some people, but for me, partnership is the greatest gift. It's just amazing, right? It's just amazing. And this person I'm in love with, these people that I've been in love with, right? Like the way that I love them, the way that I'm in love with them is exactly as they are right now. I don't want anything to change, and I want them to keep feeling that way and keep expressing themselves exactly as they are right now in each moment,
Hmm.
and to belong to the world, right? While also like I totally play with possessive kink and belonging to each other, and I love that.
Hmm.
But ultimately at the core belong to the world. And so that's the philosophical aspect. I have endless like tips, tricks, mantras, resources, methods for how to be in this process, how to open a relationship for the first time. This is one of my clinical specialties as a therapist. I work with many, many non-monogamous couples at different stages um, of this. Some of them first time opening, some of them um, are working through tons of jealousy. Some of them are it's not like even something they're working on. They just do have multiple partners, and that's part of their just relationship structure. So yeah, I don't know. Like I'm happy to offer something if you feel like there's like a specific resource or tip or whatever that you want to know or hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can drop some links down in the description after, this is recorded so that people can explore these kind of things if they want, I think that would be good. Um, Polyamory is something that I've noticed that, you know, is somewhat prevalent in the spiritual community for different people. There's like this, like we mentioned earlier, there's this like rebelliousness of like I'm not going to follow the religious texts and these kind of things. So it's like, okay, if that was off, maybe what I was told about sex was off, and so it brings some people to these other layers of exploration that um, it seems like is somewhat connected, you know? And so for me personally, I remember when I was younger, like just out of college, there was like three women that I was dating, and I was too much. I was like, I this is too much to juggle. It's a lot of emotions to take care of. It's a lot of different things, and uh, that's as far as I took it. It didn't last very long, maybe like a month or two. And then I was like, you know what? I actually am in such a hurt place inside myself that I'm not ready to commit to anybody. And that's why I'm kind of dating these different people because I don't feel fully ready to commit to anyone. And I find that to be um, the case for some people, where they're like not really ready to fully commit to anyone. But they still want the physical touch and the intimacy. So they go into these polyamorous containers. And sometimes a lot of people get hurt from that.
Well, we don't I also want to say like avoiding getting hurt is also not the point. Like
Yeah,
we risk getting hurt in any relationship because we're dealing with multiple human hearts
for
and human
sure.
minds.
Yeah.
Um, so getting hurt that yeah, might as well just accept it's going to happen one way or another.
Hmm.
That being said, everything gets mitigated to some extent with communication. I think communication is only possible if we accept what we desire. Again, this is the key. This is the theme of today's conversation, right? If we
Right.
accept what we desire and we don't feel shame, so we don't have to project the shame, right? I can then just say, I don't desire a commitment right now. I desire to have multiple sexual partners that are casual, and this is what I want to explore. This is what I can offer you. And then the the other people can be like, yes, that works for me. Or no, I want someone who's committed, right? The other person has to also understand that they want commitment and it's okay that they want that and the other person doesn't, right?
Right.
So this is the like individual responsibility to do our inner work, to know what we're desiring, to ask for what we want, to not take it personally when someone else doesn't want the same thing,
Hmm.
right? Yeah, I'm sure polyamory can be an avoidance of commitment. I think monogamy can be an avoidance of many difficult experiences too.
Yeah,
Uh, can do so many things to avoid what we don't want to feel.
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I just like as a general statement, do think like our generation of millennials is too individualistic, and I think part of that does show up as avoiding commitment.
Right.
I think there are some issues with that, right? And if someone is yeah, like I also want to trust if someone's just like, I'm not ready to be in a committed partnership. Um like, okay. And we do know that all humans need some level of touch pretty consistently
Hmm.
for health, for physical health, for emotional health, for mental health. So if you can get that in healthy ways, healthy consensual ways without commitment, like, you know, great. I think that that's great. Um, and I think, avoidance of anything is something that is worth looking at.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's a good point. I think that it's really important to look at those deeper layers. And regardless of whether it's polyamorous, monogamous, I think that relationship is the highest form of yoga. It's the highest form of like really getting a true mirror reflected back to you. And it's happening all the time. No matter where we go, no matter who we interact with, everyone's a mirror, right? That's what I believe. But like in a relationship, that mirror just kind of all the fog gets cleared off and you just see the individual is able to see themselves and all their stuff
Yeah.
way more clearly because this person, especially if both people are really authentic and not not afraid to speak their mind, like and in a loving way, right? Like they can really highlight the other person's blind spots on where they need to do some more deeper work on themselves.
Yes. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, well, I'm not going to remember like the name of the book or the person. I'm going to tell you after and we can link it, but there is a cool book and teacher of Tantra who talks about exactly in that framework of like the yoga of relationships and also like the yoga of like spiritual conscious sex. Um, and so yeah, I like that concept as well.
Amazing. Well, Amanda, it's been such an honor to have you on today. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, your authenticity, and your teachings with us today. You're always welcome to come back on anytime, and it was really fun doing this with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter. Thank you for asking me questions about my favorite subject. I love talking about it all the time.
Well, this was awesome, Amanda. Until next time, thank you again. Take
Okay,
care.
ciao.